We thought to finish out the day we would have a panel discussion. So we would invite a few people who have tinnitus just to speak about their experiences and the idea of this. I have some questions here, but please feel free to ask questions as well, either at the end or if you think of something as we're going, please feel free to pipe in. So with us this evening we have Kate Curtis. She specialises in alternative methods of pain relief, reflexology, acupuncture, and is also trained in Reiki, and does a lot of work marrying traditional medicine with also alternative methods, particularly with fertility, and getting that correctly rather. So Kate has had tinnitus for 10 years now. We also have Fiona Byrne with us, who's had tinnitus for 9 years, and has had a lot of different experiences in the journey to find a way to cope with it. Everything from kind of finding ways to accept it to looking at kind of more hopeful outlooks. And then we also have Neil Curran with us this evening. He's had tinnitus for over 20 years. Since he was a teenager. In his professional life, he works in senior management in a multinational, but also does a lot of improv comedy and is the founder of the Improv Fest in Ireland. So I suppose just to kick off the discussion, I was wondering if whoever would like to speak first, if you can remember the first time you experienced tinnitus and the kinds of things that you thought or felt around that time.
You're the veteran.
Well, yeah, I was very, very young when I first noticed it. I was lying in bed at night, which I think is when a lot of us first discover it, and I heard a buzzing noise, and I thought it was something external. I didn't realise it was in my head, and then when I did realise it was in my head, there was moments of sheer panic as a teenager, not knowing what was going on or if there was something wrong with me. So it was a pretty horrendous experience when you first discovered that you had it, which I'm sure is the same for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. I suppose, yeah, my first experience of tinnitus was, showing my age now, I remember going to a Spandau Ballet concert, and the next day there was this ringing in my ears that just was there. I was really aware of it, and it passed, so it was like maybe a day. But then many years passed, and Christmas 9 years ago it came and has never gone. So that sense of panic, that sort of not knowing what it is, thinking maybe when I wake up tomorrow it'll be gone, but it's there. So that's something I think that you can definitely relate to, and no one else, you look yourself. So, there's no evidence of anything being wrong, but you have this noise, interminable noise in your head, which is challenging.
Yeah, mine came after a very bad middle ear infection, and I was deaf for about a week, and I had steroids and antibiotics, and I think it came on quite gradually even after that. And it may have come and go. It may not have come immediately all the time, but I was typical, because I'm being an acupuncturist. I was a typical acupuncturist where I chased the symptoms and I drove them away regularly. But it's never actually gone away completely. So I noticed that with mine, it's definitely related to stress as well. So when I'm tired, and then even then it was sort of high pitched when I was tired, very low pitched when I'm relaxed. I don't know whether you find that there's a difference. So I kind of just decided that I had to live with it, even though it was from an infection. Also loud noises, definitely, because I would have listened to a lot of loud music or on the back of a motorbike for a few years, which was without knowing that you're supposed to have earplugs. For Harley Davidson was not very good for my ears. So I had a great time. But definitely, that was definitely not good. But I think it was an accumulation of a few things for me. But certainly started off with an ear infection, which I know that's, and then I also have chronic intolerance to certain foods, so I get a lot of phlegm, so that would be part of mine. It would have been kind of, part of my profile, so it's a bit of a mixture of two things.
How do you feel, I know you've mentioned kind of a few things over the course of that, how do you cope with your tinnitus? Are there any particular methods or treatments or outlooks that you take? Or?
Well, I did find that from my perspective, I use acupuncture because that's what I work in and I kind of know it so well. And I also have treated people with acupuncture, and it actually does tone the sound down quite a lot. It actually can clear it. If it's done quite soon, it can clear it actually, depending on the cause of it. But I didn't, typical acupuncturist, I didn't get enough, I met one woman, I know her quite well, and she's in her 70s now, and she had it for 10 years, and then she decided to go to a Chinese acupuncturist, and they use very long needles, and they're kind of very thick needles compared to us. So she had 12 sessions on a weekly basis, and after the 12th session, she said she cried, absolutely cried, and cried and cried and cried, and the tinnitus went. So it can be to do with deep stress, deep trauma, as well as a sound that comes in from outside that causes damage. It can also be from a deep internal stress. So I haven't had the courage to have very deep, big needles put into my ears. No. I kind of keep putting it off, thinking that's maybe the last resort. Let's find a good Chinese acupuncturist.
And Fiona, would you say that you employ any particular techniques?
Probably a few, Eimear, to be honest. I've been around the houses, and in terms of, I suppose, the first port of call is, the doctor, because Rita spoke, I just came in on the tail end of Rita. I had Meniere's as well, and I used to have frequent Meniere's attacks, in work, which is fabulous, and very embarrassing, and that just is really debilitating, and I would have a few of them in a week, and thankfully for, I would say, at least maybe 4 years plus, I haven't had a Meniere's attack, which is brilliant. But I went down even though I would be very much into the alternative medicine, and I would think also how you think about tinnitus certainly does affect how you can cope with it, and that's been very much my experience. And trying initially conventional medicine, and really, doctors, they sort of look at you with the no hope face in terms of, well, there's nothing we can really do. I was given a leaflet, just cope with it. And consultants the same. So I tried several alternative methods, and I suppose eventually came to a place of having been really angry, frustrated, quite dark down, and that's not my nature. But you try and push through and go out to social situations, engage with your friends, all of that. But I just found it really difficult to hear. And then I got to a place where I think sort of a sense of acceptance, and that whole stress response was very much in me, and that everyone experiences, I suppose, the onslaught, the arrival of tinnitus. It can be for different reasons, and I think mine was very much stress related. And since I have made conscious efforts to minimise my stress, to think about how I think about tinnitus, and get from out of here into more of a body feeling, and begin to let go of the grip that tinnitus can have on you if you're experiencing it. That's changed a huge amount for me. So I've also done some craniosacral therapy, which helps me really sort of get into the feeling of the body and relaxing and letting go. And I've found that really helpful. So it's still there, but my relationship to it has changed, and that's what I focus on. So it's rather than being something that's like, it's maybe here now. So I think our attitude and what we think about it and how we engage with it is something that we can control. The noises are there. Maybe we can't control them, but we can control how we actually interact with the noises.
And Neil, did you see any kind of parallels there or different things that you used?
Totally, except I still ride the motorbike. I've been around the houses. I mean, putting it bluntly, there's certainly nothing in terms of support in Ireland that's tangible from my experience. Back in the 90s when I first discovered it, so my local GP, my local Irish GP, because as a family we lived abroad, we lived in Africa for a few years, but my Irish GP was very supportive. He knew nothing about tinnitus by his own honesty. He was giving me different pills to try to help me relax, to suppress my hearing, and of course, most treatments are temporary. Acupuncture had a very positive effect for me, and when the option of acupuncture came up, it was, well, look, I've tried everything else, so I might as well throw money at this as well. And I was very, very surprised. I did a number of sessions. There was a herb I took, I can't remember what herb it was, but it's not the common herb that people often take for tinnitus. It wasn't that. And that I found that it offered relief. And that's essentially what a lot of treatments do offer, is relief. But my dark days were in my 20s, where I literally didn't think I would have a quality of life in the future. And I reached out back in the internet when you used to dial up through a phone line and you waited for half an hour to get a connection. There was a message board, a US message board, and one of the contributors to the board was a doctor called Stephen Nagler. He runs a website called tin.com, and he was a doctor with tinnitus, except he was there to offer support for people. And a lot of people in their dark hours were posting on this message board saying, where's my future? I can't talk to people. This is not a broken leg. People give out to you for going on about it. And he talked about retraining your brain to not see tinnitus as a threat, because tinnitus isn't dangerous. It's not life-threatening. It's how we react to it, as you say. It's our reaction, it's our perception, and how we deal with it that affects us. So I started to dabble in sound therapy. I still have a sound pillow that you can plug your iPod into and play whatever it is at night. And at the time I used to place stereo speakers close to my bed, and I'd have white noise or low music at night to kind of distract me. And I remember at the time thinking there has to be some technology around this that is cost effective. So I find white noise certainly helps keep me distracted. It's not going to suppress it or well, it can suppress it a little bit, but it's not going to send it away. So that kind of distraction. The other thing I invested in was routine. And if anyone here has insomnia, you know exactly what I mean by routine at bedtime. So I take a very strict view of bedtime. If I'm not tired, I don't go to bed. If I'm up in 3 hours and I'm not tired, I don't go to bed. If I go to bed and I can't sleep, I get up. So I very much associate the bedroom with sleep, and I'll use sound therapy as well. But if I sense any anxiety coming on, I get up and I'll keep myself busy. And I know people say don't watch TV at night and all this, but it's all nonsense. Anything to get you into a tired state and distract you from your tinnitus. Stress is a big part. Alcohol has a big also affects it. They say caffeine as well, but I drink tea. I've never noticed anything. But by managing that routine and using sound therapy as needed, I find as well the more you focus on it, the worse it gets. Yeah. It's that kind of thing. I went through a period where I totally removed myself from the tinnitus world. I wouldn't talk to people about it. I wouldn't talk to other sufferers, because it just reminded me the whole time I have tinnitus and it's not going away. So I really worked hard on developing that routine. And it was unfortunately it was a solo journey, because there was nobody really to reach out to and talk to. And I know the Irish Tinnitus Association were around back then, but their frequency, their accessibility was very, very difficult to fit into. So it was a journey I went on my own. It was very, very difficult. But it did over time. I have it over 20 years now. So over time, I was able to establish that platform of going from I'm surviving to I'm coping to I now have a normal life. And I still have that routine nowadays, but it's just like getting up and brushing your teeth in the morning. It's just something you do now. It's not a chore and it's not a struggle. So that's kind of how I've come to terms with it as such.
Yeah, I'd love to touch on something that I think to some extent all three of you have mentioned, in that the healthcare providers and their sort of relationship with tinnitus. I know we've conducted a few surveys and found almost I think it was 3/4 of people said that their doctors or audiologists and things didn't really know enough about tinnitus, and they didn't feel like they could help them sufficiently. Has that been your experience? And on the other side of that, what do you think can be done better, or where where can healthcare do more?
Support is a big thing. I went to an ENT when I was 21, 22, and my mother came with me because she didn't fully understand tinnitus. So I explained to the ENT what I was going through. He had a very cold approach to it. He was dictating into his dictaphone as I talked. And my mother broke down and cried because she had no understanding of what I was going through as a sufferer. I did the ear tests, and the audiologist did bits and bobs, poked and prodded. And a couple of months later, I got a letter from the ENT saying, "I've good news, you don't." Oh yeah, he sent me for a MRI. And a couple of weeks later, I got a letter from the ENT saying, "We're delighted to tell you don't have a brain tumour." And that was the end of my experience with the ENT. So that was what you're up against. Like most GPs, they don't have it, they're not familiar with it, and because it's not life-threatening, they don't see it they don't treat it in the fashion I think it needs to be, which is support.
And there's one thing actually that I'm just remembering, that there's one thing that really helps the noise go down, and it's actually it may sound mad, but there's a combination of points that can be used, acupuncture points that are all along the back, but if they're put in a certain way, what they do is they really help to stretch your neck up and release all the kind of tight band of muscles, which a lot of us develop as we get older, and that means that the whole channel of energies that go around there and the nerve supply changes. And I found that is the most amazing. I remember when I did it first ever, the noise went. I mean, that's pretty profound. But I have a difficulty with, I think I would have had difficulty with the structure of the neck when I was giving birth, when I was being birthed, so I've always had pains here. The other thing is that I recently was at a seminar, an acupuncture seminar, and this guy there had this long gold probe, which is, I can't remember the name of it, but I'm going to order one because I was really blown away with what it did. And it was a gold plate, like a very thick acupuncture needle, and it removes scar tissue. And he's had incredible results with women who've had, cesarean sections and all kinds of things. And I know I have scar tissue that comes all the way down here from that infection, So I'm going to try that. I've never given up. It's the other thing, I never give up. I still think that there's going to be a cure. So I do tend to go around, if I hear something that's a little bit, useful, and even if it doesn't clear it altogether, I'd love it just to go down a peg, because it's quite high at the moment. And if I'm tired, it goes right up. So if I could have it that it's down a peg consistently, I would be very happy. And I think that's probably the same.
Yeah.
It's when it shoots right up, and then I can't actually hear so well. I have to turn the TV up, but my hearing comes and goes depending on the sound, the level of noise. Is that?
Well, I have tinnitus-related hearing loss.
Okay,
and so I was born with perfect hearing. I have no problem with my hearing until 9 years ago, and it became a massive issue for me. So I admire you in your senior management role and your international company. I'm like, good for you. Wow. For me, there was a lot of loss around it because my hearing also, I've no hearing really in this ear, and I think 30% hearing in this ear. So I wear a hearing aid, and that was a big adjustment for me, to get used to that. But I would be lost without my hearing aid, and it makes a huge difference. So I can now be in the world in a relatively normal way. I can now enjoy music again. So all those things that I had lost, I'm a sociable person, so being in conversation with friends when you just sort of, okay, they've said this, and I think I hear this, and then I'm going off down a different road, and it's like, conversation's actually about something completely different. Or when you're in a group and people are laughing, well then I laugh because it's obviously funny. So there's all that distancing and isolation that goes with it. But again, I suppose I would be a believer of what attitude am I bringing to it, and what help can I get. And I completely agree with you there, Katie, in terms of my experience of it was that, complete restriction, upper back, neck, in all around here, feeling like I'd steel rods, here, it was just this complete compacted feeling. And you know, I did lots of different therapies. Amatsu therapy really helped me, craniosacral as well. But only now, I would say in the last year, am I getting any sense of relief. And stress for me is a massive trigger. And you know, my tinnitus is now at a level where I can hear it, but it's tolerable. And I think self-care is really important. So when you know you have your routine that works, that's what you do. When you know it's stressful for you to be in a particular environment, then you mind yourself around going into it, or you know you support yourself if that's what you have to be in. So I think very much tuning into responses and becoming aware of when it actually can spike. What can help it spike? Maybe too much alcohol, maybe too much coffee. Not having fun, like not letting go, not doing the things you like, because I think it can be something that can overwhelm, and it's about, you know, giving yourself the support to actually navigate it so it doesn't take over your life.
Yeah.
That's been my experience, anyhow, you know.
Yeah.
And you go through times where, you know, at the beginning, all that sort of difficulty, darkness, sadness, you're very much on your own with it, and you don't want to harp on about it, but then you find a way, and people come into your life and you hear this, that, the other, and you try anything. And you know, I do think the power of this, the mind, to be able to also accept it so as to cope with it is a big thing for me anyhow.
Yeah. So like on that sort of the point of first diagnosis, say, so I'm sure we maybe have some people with us in the room today, and maybe who'll be seeing these videos later on, who have only just been diagnosed with tinnitus after, you know, having other issues like brain tumours and whatever else ruled out. What piece of advice or what would you say to maybe yourself or to someone else if they've just found out that they have tinnitus, and they're just starting to get to terms with this?
Well, I'd probably say don't panic, which is probably the last thing that they are going to do. But definitely not panic. It gets darker before it gets brighter. You have to come to accept it. It's a bit like a bereavement in a way. And until you're willing to accept it, it's not going to, your lifestyle isn't going to improve. But explore the therapies that are available. Different people will say different things about different therapies. There's different reasons behind why we have tinnitus, so explore those options. But I wouldn't be necessarily saying the first point of contact is the doctor as someone who's going to help you, because certainly that made me feel worse. But reach out, don't panic. Reach out to people who know what they're talking about, and take it from there.
That would be my advice as well, is to just try and stay calm, which is, as Neil says, is the last thing you think you can do, but it is possible. I certainly found there was a guy who I ended up linking him with, who's a UK-based therapist, and he's a craniosacral therapist working out of London, but he's also a core process therapist, so that he basically works in the Buddhist tradition and in terms of self-care. So I used to Skype him once a week. He himself has had tinnitus for 20 plus years, and he has written an ebook on understanding tinnitus. And as the guys have said here, the reason tinnitus can present can be different for all three of us here, and anyone who has it it can arrive for different reasons for different people. But for me, it really worked with this guy. My Skype sessions, he got me to sort of, I suppose, accept it through our sessions, and also reading his book. His book is actually all about turning tinnitus from a tyrant to a friend. So what is tinnitus trying to tell me? And at the time, my lifestyle was like, how many balls can I have in the air? How much can I cram into a day? And how busy can I be? And that was literally how I lived my life, going from one thing to the next, thinking I was enjoying it. Like, it wasn't like I was unhappy, but it was constant, always on. And that's actually really not my personality when I think about it. So it's almost like tinnitus has allowed me to come back to who I really am, actually. So in a way I go, yay, I can do this. Well, I would have liked to get here without tinnitus, but it is one of those things that you think, okay, if I think about turning from a tyrant to a friend, and he's got the most practical sheet that he has in his book, which gives you different ways of recognizing how, on different states like anger, frustration, pissed offness, into acceptance, calm. Oh, now I know if I do this, okay, you're telling me I need to slow down. So you become much more aware of yourself, actually. And I think in the world we're living in now, people are becoming more self-aware, becoming more mindful. So, you know, it's actually, for me, it's just a really nice way to approach managing my tinnitus. And he has been the most helpful person on my journey with it. I haven't actually had a physical craniosacral session with him, but it was the Skype sessions, and it was the book, and it was his understanding. It was his actually, I totally know what you're saying. And that made me feel like, oh great, somebody gets it. So, and therein, you know, that's where the work started for me. And you just, you know, it's every day you live with it, and that's why I think it's nice to see our experience with tinnitus rather than our struggle with tinnitus, or you know, it's our suffer with tinnitus. It's like our experience, because we are experiencing it.
I think it might be interesting to know, to do a bit of research to see how many people who had forceps deliveries as babies, whether that might be something. Because I'm a midwife originally, so the forceps, you know, go right round here, and a lot of babies were born with forceps in the old days, in our days, because the mothers were given chloroform, which made them go to sleep. So oftentimes, you know, they had to be lifted out. So, you know, it's a very tight grip. So, you know, that's one thing. That would be an interesting one. And it's nice to know this, because sometimes there is a different reason, an even further back reason. So hypnotherapy was a good one for me. That's another thing. Also soothing through the self-hypnosis and mindfulness, that new coined expression, which is really about Buddhist type of meditation. It really calms the central nervous system down. That, again, just makes the agitation part come right down there, you know. So that's really a big one. But that would be interesting. Because most people who have it, I don't know if anyone here has this, I mean, if you were to put your hands up, does anyone get problems with their neck or tightness around their heads? Or, you know, some people would find, I mean, stress of course can cause that, but it can also come from other things, other factors. It can come from food intolerances, it can come from, you know, the fact of that original trauma at birth, which craniosacral is a therapy that's like an osteopathic treatment. But it really, and I've had it, I mean, I've had lots of it over the years, but it is amazing for extending and opening out the whole back part here of your head and neck, and that then again reduces the sound again. It makes it manageable, and it sometimes takes it away. So if you haven't had it for very long, it's definitely worth, like, you know, chasing some of these therapies, because some of them can actually stop it progressing if you get it done in time, depending on the reason why you get it.
I think that is true, because, you know, when you get it, your instinct is to, what can I do to get rid of this? Why, how can I inform myself? And that was certainly me. And you know, I just journeyed through so many different therapies. I spent thousands, and I just was like, I'm going to get rid of this. You know, that whole determination. And, you know, I do think it is quite a personal thing, isn't it? Where, you know, so acupuncture is very successful here, nothing for me. Craniosacral relief, maybe these guys, I don't know. So it's about finding the right one for you, and I think that's part of the process as well, you know. So, and also looking at how you are in yourself. That for me, that was certainly, because it was very much a stress response.
Yeah, I'd love to focus a little bit more on something you said there about kind of the positive aspect that tinnitus sort of brought you back to who you really were. And again, talking about experiences, not suffering things, something I think that's sort of been a common thread through a lot of our talks today. It's been sort of more of that positive outlook and trying not to focus on the negatives. Neil and Kate, I don't know if you have any sort of particular piece of positivity that you found came to you through tinnitus. Obviously, like a terrible thing to have, but something that you found something good that came out of it. I don't know if you have an example or.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose on a very basic level, I learned that, well, I've got to make the most of every day, because tomorrow could be a bad day with tinnitus. And I ride a motorbike, with no shame, and I enjoy music. So I will go to concerts, I'll wear ear protection. I'm involved with improv comedy, which is, I suppose, it's a way of it's a way of finding mindfulness and being in the moment without having to meditate, because I can't meditate because I just hear ringing when I meditate. So I can't do that. But it certainly taught me to make the most of every day. And I don't mean that in a morbid way, I mean that because I've developed routine, things like fitness, exercise is an important part of that, and having goals in life so that you're not coasting through life, just constantly aware of this sound. So it kind of gave me a drive that, well, if I'm going to beat this, I'm going to live a better life as a result of it. So that kind of came out of it for me.
Yeah, I think for me, it made me stop, like you were talking about the level of, because I have a very strong inner drive. I've always had that very, strong drive. So I a typical person, not to sit down till after 10 at night. I'd still be pottering around, having done 3 jobs that day. That's typical of me, So what happens is, it's a marker. I use it as a marker now. So if the noise goes up a little bit more, I say, okay, that's enough. You've got to slow down. And also, I completely ignore it these days. Only except if it goes up. Like it's up at the moment because I was working last night. I was awake all night doing some work with this little girl. And it's actually up because I was awake all night and I slept during the day, but it's still it's not the right sleep, So, and I rarely do this, so it just shows you. I actually couldn't do this very much because it would really affect, it's kind of a marker for your internal nervous system as well, I think. So, I have a son who told me recently very happily, he said he's 20 and he said, Mom, it's okay, at least you can hear when you've got the tinnitus. It's when you can't hear anything, it's when you've got a problem. But that's not really a very good thing to say here, but at least, it is a marker, and it's a really, I've made friends with it. I definitely have. I was obsessed with it. I didn't do any of those. I didn't know about all the things that you found out about. I just I went on a major journey on different levels, and I found out a lot about myself which I would never have found out about. It's extraordinary. So there is a reason for everything. Everything that we have, emotionally, physically, spiritually, is linked. There's no separation. So, depending on your belief systems, there's a reason. There's a reason why you have it. And but sometimes, for some it'll go. So don't lose hope. Any of you who have it, don't lose hope.
Yeah, and I think it's important to add to that as well, because we've talked about things that can affect tinnitus. But like I say, I still ride a motorbike and I still go to music. So the things that a doctor will tell you written off the back of a pamphlet that say don't go to loud music and don't, in a way it's nonsense. It doesn't. You don't allow it to change your life. You just get on. And I like the way you say I totally agree with that. I know what normal tinnitus is to me, and that is there is a benchmark. When that's raised, I know, okay, I'm stressed. Yeah. Now, stress is an interesting thing because you can be stressed without really accepting or knowing how stressed you are. And tinnitus is a good way of letting you know you need to slow down, take a day off, go for a massage, do something. And that's important. It's important to be familiar with your tinnitus, I think.
Yeah. And I think I would totally endorse what Kate and Neil are saying, because it's about making it your friend. So what do I have to learn about myself from this? What do I need to do here? Do I need to slow down? Letting go is a big thing. And in the guy's book, Julian's book, the guy in the UK, he talks about, interestingly enough, tinnitus, there are certain type of characteristics in tinnitus. The people who experience tinnitus generally quite driven, motivated, do a lot in their day, push through, all that sort of stuff. And yeah, I think it's about asking yourself, what is it that I need to learn here? What is my body maybe trying to tell me? And turning it into your friend.
I have a lovely story, actually. I've just remembered it. I have a man who came to me for years for different things, for acupuncture, and he just, by the way, said, oh, I've got this tinnitus, I've had it for a long time, it's buzzing in my ears. So I used, because in Chinese medicine when we take the pulse, and that shows us the different levels of energy in the system and what's going on. And I just followed whatever his pulse would be each time, consistently, the needles that I used were for opening the heart and for treating the kidneys. So the kidney and heart energy together. And after about 10 sessions, he said to me when he was at home one night, he got an email from a brother who he hadn't seen for 25 years, who had left home at 16 and had never come home. And the brother decided that he'd contact him, and they arranged to meet. And you know what happened? The tinnitus went. So I think that it can, like that older lady that I was talking about, and hers went after the deep, deep crying into the centre of her heart. Like that was a huge, huge heart pain. And I think I may have that, so I'm hoping that someday I'll find a tool to access that. But it's such a deep place that we can't get to. It's so hard. It's such a very deep, deep hidden place within ourselves. So I think the tinnitus sometimes is there to show that there may be something that we need to look at that's so deep within ourselves. So
it's really, really interesting.
that's just another. It's a kind of journey that you might go on, or you might just decide, let's just do everything on the surface and let's just learn to cope, and that's okay too. And there is a way of doing that.
We have a few minutes. If there are any questions from the audience, I'd love to give people an opportunity to ask them. Yes?
I'd like to ask what sound people hear. My sound is like a hissing sound. Is that typical?
I hear tree sounds.
Tree?
Yeah, my left ear is more dominant, so I hear a hiss, a ring, and when it's quiet I can hear a rumble as well. So, but during the daytime it's more the hiss and the ring. But depending how quiet it is, then I can hear the bass rumble is the most disturbing. Is the most not disturbing. Is the most unsettling, because we all know what it's like when a bass speaker is very powerful. It's almost like you can feel that in the air. But yeah, it's quite odd. Tree sounds.
It's high, mid, and low.
Yeah.
It's all through the EQ.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's funny because I have two different sets of sounds to go through, at different times, and I just mentioned there earlier on. I shake my head like that, it's like a bell ringing in my head. And I go up and down, it's a different sound bell ringing in my head. So I don't know whether it's got to do with blockage or just maybe stress related or something like that. But I often wonder why the two different forms of tinnitus in both ears.
Depends. You may have two different reasons. You may have two different causes. That could be, because I don't have it in this ear, except very, very occasionally, slightly it comes, but it's this one here. And I know that, so the three different sounds again. And in my own kind of knowledge of the Chinese medicine, if it's high pitched, it's to do with what we call liver qi stagnation. Liver qi stagnation is deep, deep stress, like fired up energy, and that's when it goes right up. When it's a low noise, it's the background noise, it's there all the time. But then if there's another noise that's in between those two, and that's when you're exhausted and tired and burnt out, tired, just needing to rest. That's and that would be called kidney, qi deficiency. That's the kind of baseline energy deficiency. And that actually, when that's treated, whatever way you do that, whether it's meditation, whether it's craniosacral, whether it's acupuncture or massage, or just a good sleep, that noise actually changes. That's the one you can change. The high-pitched one, some people would say that comes also from a chronic infection. It can come from that, like a low-grade sinus infection that goes into your middle ear. So that can be part of that high-pitched noise as well. So it
depends. I have mine is jet engines, so I've been in the airport, I suppose, 24/7, and it's in this ear. There was a time when it moved into both, and that was really very difficult because I can function when I have it only in one ear, so you know that must be very challenging for you in both. And I've had it in both, and it's actually since dissipated in this ear, but it's still in this ear. And again, it will spike and it'll go like woo when I'm stressed. But most of the time it's background noise now, and it's manageable. It's manageable. But my so I need subtitles when I'm watching TV now, you know, because speech discrimination for me with my hearing loss, it can be difficult with accents. So things like that. But you learn to give yourself the tools that you need. You go into a restaurant, you ask for a table against the wall, you ask for a table in a quiet corner of the restaurant, so that you're not, you know, knocking your social head on the your social life on the head. So there are things you can do, and I have found restaurants, I will always say, somebody in the party wears hearing aids. It's not me, but I will say somebody in the party wears hearing aids. So can we have a table against the wall? And everyone is really helpful, sure. So there are things you can do to help yourself, you know, making sure that if you are at a party, that your back isn't to the centre of the room. Because certainly for me, that's just like, oh my God, it's like somebody throwing 20 items at me. I'm never going to catch any of them. If I'm having a one-on-one, I'll be able to actually interact with the person. But so there are things like that you can do to help yourself in busy environments, is making sure that you have a mask or a buffer. And, you know, telling your friends and your family as well, being honest was very hard for me. To actually say, you know, I really have difficulty hearing, and especially when I started wearing my hearing aids, to say, I wear hearing aids, so I'm going to have to ask if I need to ask you to repeat stuff to make sure that I've heard you, or, you know, so I think there's a lot of honesty, getting honest with yourself, and everyone's totally cool with it. They repeat if they have to, no problem in sitting wherever you need to sit in a restaurant so that you can actually enjoy the evening. You know, it's things like that, helping yourself and being honest with it, yeah.
I think that's a really lovely note to end on. I'd like to thank Kate, Fiona and Neil, they've been fantastic.